Hello! So today I am going to be discussing and reacting to and talking about what I learned from interviewing 4 adolescents about reading. To give you a little background, I interviewed 2 adolescents that are 14 years old and in 9th grade, 1 adolescent that is 16 and in 11th grade, and the last adolescent that I interviewed is 17 and in 12th grade. I really enjoyed doing this assignment. I found it not only interesting to see what they had to say about reading, but also which questions really caused them to kind of think deeper and really analyze what the question was asking them before responding. So to start, I thought that it was interesting that while all of 4 of them thought that they were considered themselves to be good readers, that the reasoning behind why they are good readers really varied. All 4 of them had different answers. So it was really interesting to see that some of them felt it because they find reading easy, others because the fact that they're in advanced classes at school, and that because they've always read harder books than their reading level, others because they read a lot, perhaps more than their peers, others because, and this was to me the most interesting response, because they're able to understand what the author is trying to convey in the book, what their purpose in writing the book was. I found that one pretty interesting because it kind of went past what I thought they would think about and kind of really looked at what the takeaway when they're reading. So I found that interesting because I felt that they would have said that they're good readers perhaps because they read a lot, because they read lots of different books, because they've always enjoyed reading, something along that line. So it's very interesting to see what they had to say about that. I also found it interesting that when I asked them what it was a good reading experience that they had, that 3 of them chose to mention times, or actually I believe it was 2 of them mentioned times that they read with others. I found that interesting because to me, I would have thought that some of the moments that they would have told me about were moments where they did it as an individual, whether because when they read their first book by themselves, or when they read a first chapter book, something like that, or if it was involving someone that it would have been, let's say, perhaps a parent, such as when a parent reads to them, something like that. So I found it interesting because to me, some of my favorite moments really involve, while some of them involve others involve are things that I've done myself. So when I asked them about their what their best ability in regards to their reading was, I did not at all expect 3 of them to say something about the fact that they are able to read quickly or fast. I did not expect for them to really think of their ability to finish a book as a good ability. While they didn't expand on that, when I kind of looked back at what they had to say, I kind of interpreted this response to be one as that their ability to read quickly allows them to read more books, which allows them to kind of enter different worlds. So I took it as that this is a good ability for them because it allows them to read more and often. So, So I found it interesting, and I liked that two of the people who they stated were the best readers that they know, that they put it as, one of them put it as that they're invested in their reading, while the other one said that they thought about their reading, which to me really shows that these two students understood and recognized that good readers don't just read for comprehension, that as they're reading, they are making connections to the book. They're really looking deeper at the book than just what's being told on the surface level. I think this is pretty important that they notice this and recognize this. As a teacher, I know I'm always trying to get my students to read and connect and think about what they're reading. My students really struggle with reading, so for them that's very tough, but I know many other students that I've worked with, or adolescents that are family or friends of mine, that are able to read and go beyond just comprehending. I feel as teachers, it's important to ensure that your students aren't just reading for comprehension. I think when they are, that's when you kind of lose them. I think when a student's able to connect to a book, that's where they're really going to learn to love. I know some of my favorite books are ones that I've been able to connect and relate to. So I thought that was pretty interesting and pretty important to bring up. So I also found it interesting that when I asked them how did they learn to read, that a couple of them, I believe it was two, one of them noted that it was both that she learned both at home and school. I found this pretty interesting and wanted to kind of bring up because as a teacher, I feel that when you getting the same message at home and at school, that's where you're gonna kind of grow as a reader. I think it's really, really important that not only schools and parents and relatives help a child to learn how to read, but once that child has learned how to read, to continually support them in reading, expose them to books. This will help them not only be a better reader as they practice reading by continually reading, but also really as you expose them to different types of books, whether it's at school, at home, or even preferably both, they'll learn to love reading. So a couple of the things that came up in the interviews connected to what we've learned in class. So the first was when I asked them about who they thought were better readers, two of them outrightly said females, while one said that she didn't think it was based on gender, that depended on the person, but that if she was to pick based on boys or girls, that she would pick girls. The last one really didn't think it depended on gender, but this really connects to the fact that worldwide literacy scores and a lot of research on literacy shows that boys do not perform as well in reading as girls do. Clearly, this is something that is seen in classrooms, not only by teachers, but by their peers, which is why these 4 students felt that girls are better at reading. So it was interesting to see that the research is really being noticed not only by teachers but by their fellow peers. So as I said before, one student, well, really 2 of them, felt that it depended more on the person than a boy, or depending on their gender. So Smith and Wilhelm did a research on boys, girls, and reading, and they found a lot of different findings and things that they noted. While they did find that generally girls enjoy reading more, they find it easier to find books that they like than boys. They also did note that it is important for teachers not to just depend on what these statistics say, but to keep in mind that in this case they said boys, but that everyone is different. I think it's important as a teacher that this is very important, because if you don't get to know your students as individuals, you don't get to know what they like, what they don't like, what interests them, then you're not going to be able to help them really enjoy reading, because these things, that when you learn these things about them, you'll be able to help them find books that they love, books that they enjoy reading, which will help them realize that reading is something enjoyable and fun to do. So when I asked them about how often they read, I noticed that they all said that they read regularly. And also when I asked them about who the best reader they know is, a lot of them said that the person that they chose reads often, or even in one case, multiple books at a time. This really supports what Vondrasek said when he noted that skilled readers read an average of 11 pages a day. So basically what he's saying is that to be a good reader, you gotta practice. You can't just read every now and then. You need to read often. As a teacher, I know that my students who don't read often, don't read at home, that they're struggling. So I encourage them to read often. I practice reading with them often. So this just shows from what I see as a teacher and what these students see, that reading is something that, just like writing, just like math, just like sports, needs to be practiced. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it, and the more you're going to enjoy it. And lastly, to wrap it up, and kind of connect to what we've been learning about this week, 3 out of the 4 of them said that when asked about what type of books that they like to read, said that they like fantasy. This connects to what we discussed in class this week, and the fact that fiction, and specifically speculative fiction such as fantasy, is very, very popular with young adults and adolescents. So overall, I really enjoyed doing this. It was very eye-opening for me. I learned a lot, more than I think I expected to. And I think this is definitely something that all future teachers should do. I know as someone that's working in a school currently, that while I work with younger students than the ones I interviewed with, I might take some time to kind of ask my students about this and see what they have to say. So I'm kind of curious to see what they have to say, because I know it was very interesting and to see what the older students had to say.